we are very excited to be talking about more ways that the AudioMoth recording devices are going to be getting used in science. So that is the topic for today, harnessing AudioMoths for nighttime nature conservation. And today I'm here with you. I'm the education director and co-lead on the Eclipse Soundscapes project. Kelsey Perrett is also here. She is the social media coordinator and content writer. She's mostly managing the chat, or if there's technical difficulties, she'll be able to help you out. Although we will say, if possible, let's keep questions until the end. We can do them out loud at the end, or if you want to add them to the chat at the end, then Kelsey and I can work on feeding them out loud to our guest speaker who is here with us today, which is Don Ficken. He is a Missouri master naturalist, and he'll be talking about two of his projects and how they are using the AudioMoths, but I'll leave that for him to discuss in a little bit. So I am going to very quickly give you just a couple of updates on the Eclipse Soundscapes project before we get to hear from Dawn. Of course, we have the audio data that lots of people submitted with their micro SD cards, and you might be wondering what's going on. There's the different stages that we have. I do have on the screen the stages. Stage one was receiving it and sorting it. We got all those envelopes. We had a lot of sorting to do, figuring out which micro SD cards went with which location. People did a great job of submitting their location information on online forms, as well as writing it down with their and mailing it physically with their physical micro SD card of audio data. And so we've mostly finished sorting through that. The stage after that was uploading all of that data, and we're just pretty much at the end of that. And that took a while because that was using little micro SD cards and making sure that we uploaded all of the information on those ID cards and then matched it to the location information. So we've been working on that a lot, and we are just finishing up with that and getting started on stage 3, which is segmenting the data. So we need to take all of that raw data and separate it out into different time chunks. 1-minute chunks to help us with the analysis and 3-minute chunks to help with the sharing. So we're still in the process of making that happen before we get to the process of analysis and sharing out that audio data, which are stages 4 and 5. So we're going to keep you updated, but that's where we are right now. And hopefully next month at the next community webinar, we'll have even more details for you. And the other role that people had, other than sending in their audio data, was submitting their observations through the ES Observer form. And so a lot of people submitted observations about what they heard, what they saw, what they felt, whatever sense that was available to them. They wrote down some observations during the eclipse in April. And so we have been working on going through all of that. We're working with North Carolina State University. And we are hoping to get to do a lot of different things with that data, but the first things that we've started looking at were related to science identity and belonging. So how did participating in Eclipse Soundscapes make people feel more connected to science and the scientific community? Did that happen from participating? If you completed the reflection survey, that helped us start to figure that out. We also wondered about awe and amazement. A lot of people say that eclipses inspire wonder and amazement. Did that happen? So some of your answers about how amazing you found it are helping us figure that out. And then, of course, the nature and animal response. So what kind of observations did people make note of? How were the animals affected by the eclipse? And so we're starting to go through all of this, but it's a lot of data, which is awesome. And we hope to start having some more updates in that regard soon. But the update I have for you right now is who we are working with, which is North Carolina State University. All right, so without further ado, I will pass this on to Don, and he can chat with you all about these amazing projects.
Well, thank you, Mary Kay. It's been really exciting, by the way, to be involved in this project. It's all been a lot of fun. So Mary Kay did mention that I am a Missouri Master Naturalist, and I've been really involved with the Dark Sky Missouri chapter, which is really what we're trying to do is reduce the amount of artificial light that goes up into the sky because it's really important to have a natural night for nature. So I'll give you some details as we move forward here, but let me just summarize what we're trying to do with these AudioMoths. We received 18 AudioMoths. By the way, thank you so much for that. And what we're planning to do in the Metro St. Louis area in a pilot test is just to figure this out, is we want to collect what's called nocturnal bird calls. This obviously falls a big time for migration. We're going to try to time it during the month of September, if you will. And what we're trying to do is make nature come alive, if you will, at night. So people tend to go indoors. They don't think about the natural world that's going out there. We want them to realize that nature's very robust. Lots of things are happening, and that we want to encourage them to turn off their lights during migration. Now, we're having a lot of fun with this, and we're planning to contribute to some eBirds citizen science stuff. But I will tell you, this is a deadly serious project because birds, when they migrate, they tend to be drawn to urban areas with lots of lights, and they collide into buildings, and literally millions of birds are dying. So to the extent that we can get the public excited about what we're doing, and we can get them to turn their lights off, it'll be more than just real science, citizen science. It'll be actually maybe saving birds' lives. So next, if you could, please, next slide. So I have to do a shout out right off the bat is SciStarter. I don't know if you guys are familiar with SciStarter. I love them. They've got lots of projects. I've been working with them for the last several years. It's really through SciStarter that I found out about Eclipse Soundscapes. I mean, how wonderful is that? And if you're looking for a citizen science project, it's a great place to go. And of course, I have to do a shout out to Eclipse Soundscapes because I've been working in the Missouri Master Naturalist now for a bit, and for the Dark Sky Missouri group for quite a while, and I had not thought about sound being another way to look at nature. It seems an obvious thing. We tend to visually look at stuff, and we go out and water sample and all that kind of stuff, but sound, that is really amazing. So anyway, a shout out to both of you guys. Thank you so much for opening some big doors, at least for me. Next slide. So Dark Sky, I mentioned that. On this slide, I've got really the parent corporation on the left-hand side is called Dark Sky. By the way, we used to be called International Dark Sky, but they changed the name. I like it better. And we're mostly known, well, first off, we're throughout the world. We have many chapters throughout the world, 70-something chapters. Probably most known for like the Dark Sky place. If you were to go, say, the Grand Canyon, you want to do stargazing or something like that. That's mostly what we're known for. But what they're really becoming, I think, the world's authority on how artificial light at night is impacting everything from humans to wildlife and whatever else. So on the right-hand side, I've got Dark Sky Missouri, which is our chapter, our Missouri State chapter that I helped found in 2018. And we were very happy to be statewide. We actually have the 4th Urban Night Sky Place designation. And what that is, it's like a dark sky place, except it doesn't have the dark sky requirements, and it's made for urban areas. In other words, we want people to realize that urban areas can be a place for nature, a place to enjoy the night sky, even though it may not be as dark as you want. And our chapters really, because we're brand new, of course, we don't have that many members. So we're doing a lot of work with groups like Missouri Master Naturalist and Audubon groups and conservation groups to really kind of get the message out. Next slide, please. So one of the first things that I discovered after we started our chapter in Dark Sky, Missouri, was, hey, birds are a big deal. Birds are really, really impacted by light, and because they migrate and just the way that they live. And so what we did is, this is kind of novel, I guess. We basically started what's called a Lights Out Heartland program. And that program is recruiting multiple states that are connected to Missouri, things like Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Oklahoma, Tennessee. We're all collaborating to say, hey, can we collectively turn out our lights during the May and September migration periods of each year? We can get buildings to turn off the lights, people to turn off the lights. That's going to help with bird safe passage, if you will. And we know, of course, that birds are not respecting boundaries. They're flying through, small urban areas, suburban areas, urban areas, across state lines. And so we've done, it's still a work in progress, but we've got quite a few big names there, things like the Gateway Arch and the zoo, St. Louis and Kansas City zoos. some Audubon groups out in Kansas, and we're slowly working through a number of groups, and we just like the message of simply turn off your lights. Okay, Mary Kay, next slide. Okay, so let's put a little bit of context to the problem. Go ahead, next slide. So in front of me, I have a US map, and some very clever scientists decided, look, we can look at road maps and all that, but let's put together a map based on satellite input and population, some other algorithms. Let's put together a map that visually displays the amount of light pollution on a particular period, okay? So this map in front of me is from the late 1950s, and you'll see the very dark spots on the west side of the US, that there's lots of dark spots, lots of places you can go out and see the Milky Way, whatever else. But there's also some blue, and then green, and then yellow, and then orange as it gets progressively more light polluted. And you can see the East Coast, no surprise, like the New York area, all that is fairly lit up. But this is late 50s. You can see from this, I'm guessing if I were to look at this whole map right here, it might be 70% of it, maybe 75% of it is still pretty dark, okay? So Mary Kay, if you can go, and by the way, the box right there is isolating St. Louis and Kansas City. You can see where I live. So if you advance to the next slide, Mary Kay. So this is actually depressing. It's a 2025 projection, and you wouldn't think that we're getting there, but we really are. You can see at this map, it's really lit up with almost no dark spots left, just maybe in the west area a little bit. There's a few in Missouri where that little box is. You can see a little blue spot down there, but it's really a shame to see that we're lighting up so much of our natural night. And so that, of course, has a lot of impact on things that we'll talk about here in just a moment. Go ahead, next slide, please. So this is a look at just St. Louis. And although we could, on one hand, say it's very pretty, that we're seeing the lights from the city, all the street lights, downtown is very lit up. So this is a satellite view of the Metro St. Louis area. And it is pretty. You've seen probably the world view of this, where you see lights all, from the satellites at night. They're very pretty. But if you think about it, all that light is just wasted. I mean, all that's just an energy waste. And it can, when it goes up in the sky like that, it disrupts everything from bird migration to bats and other types of things. So next slide, please. So this is the part that's scary, okay? So when I started Dark Sky in 2018, the standard answer was, what is the rate of growth of sky brightness? They said 2%. That was the standard answer. But what happened is that there were citizen scientists working through groups like SciStarter that were literally looking up in the sky, and they were measuring the number of stars they could see, and they started reporting what they thought the sky brightness where they live. So as opposed to a satellite, a person on the ground has lights in their face from a building, a stoplight. They've got clouds that are bouncing light back down, maybe. But anyway, a major study came out, and it concluded that from the year 2011 to 2022, the actual growth of artificial light in terms of sky brightness was an averaging 10% per year, doubling in less than 8 years. And that is one of the issues that we're really trying to fight with this particular project. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. So what is the effect? Now, I don't have time to go through this, but you can imagine that obviously all this light going up in the air is not a smart use of money. It's just wasting money. I mean, why would you want to, for example, highlight the top of your tree or something like that? It really does actually decrease safety. You'll learn if you dive into some of the dark sky stuff is that bright lights make dark shadows. So, when I say that we have to have lights to be safe, that's true, but it's got to be correct lighting, not just you have to have correct lighting to make sure you're safe. It does mess up wildlife habitat, and there's a growing amount of evidence that harms humans. And there's obviously not able to see the stars like we used to. And there's some concerns with ability to do research, scientific research. All the satellites that are going over are reflecting light back to the ground and causing problems with telescopes and other types of things to do things. Next slide, please. So that brings us to birds. So in front of me on the left-hand side, I have a actually North America map, and it's divided into 4 colored areas. On the left-hand side is the migration path called the Pacific Flyway. Then we have the Central Flyway, that just a little bit east of that, covering Kansas, et cetera. And then we've got the Mississippi Flyway, that's where I live, and the Atlantic Flyway. And so you can imagine that during, well, even for practically right now, it started, there's billions of birds that migrate through the US and Canada every year in spring and fall. And the problem is that they tend to migrate at night. In fact, I think 70% of the birds are migratory and 80% of those migrate at night. So 600 million birds are being killed annually by building collisions. And that's because birds get confused by the lighting, which I'll explain in just a minute. It's a big, big number. And no matter where you live in North America, and of course, this is going on throughout the world, but particularly just highlighting North America, this is a really big deal. Next slide, please. So why are we having so many problems with it? It turns out that birds like to migrate at night. They use the stars and moon for navigation. So if there's so much light they can't see the stars or the moon or the Milky Way, whatever else, they tend to be attracted to the urban and suburban areas. It's like that light draws them to that, and when they get there, they get confused and disoriented, and they try to fly into windows to buildings, whatever else. And particularly when there's a when there's low cloud ceiling, it makes the birds fly lower, which puts them more and more in danger of flying into some buildings. Now, you might think, which is what I originally thought, was, hey, it's all big, tall buildings. And that's true on a per building collision, death basis. In other words, you get a lot of birds colliding into buildings. There'll be a high proportion of birds for that little spot. But the truth is, low rises are about 56% of the deaths issue, and residences, which are accumulating all this light together, are about 44%. So it adds up to some pretty big numbers, and it's a really sad thing to say that you've got these birds that are literally not able to navigate and do their normal traditional migration because they're simply getting confused. Next slide, please. So this is not the ranking that I want to see for where I live, for St. Louis. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, where are you here? There you go. There you go. So this is not the ranking that I want for the St. Louis or Kansas City area of my state, basically. But there was a Cornell study, lab study, that was done in 2019 that they looked at the 125 largest urban areas in the continental US. And that's a lot of cities, obviously. And they estimated that about 600 million birds were dying each year, and they ranked in spring the most dangerous cities, and in fall, the most dangerous cities. What you can see, I'm sad to say, we don't have a good Cardinals game, but we are certainly high in the rank of this particular thing. St. Louis is the number 5th deadliest for spring migration for birds, and number 6 deadliest for fall. And our colleagues across the state are 7th for spring and 8th deadliest for fall. Those are not the type of things that I want to talk about, but it's the fact of life. And that puts more urgency around us really working on us. Now, Chicago is number 1 in both. So you can see that the Mississippi Flyway, which is where Chicago also lies in, is a really, really big deal. Next, please. All right, so let's talk about next. You can go ahead, next one. So we're talking about protecting the night, but the truth is that we actually have to restore it because we are already way past just stopping this light pollution. We actually have to reverse it. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with this little AudioMoth project that we have going on is we're talking about, of course, nocturnal flight calls. That's our initial pilot project. And we're going to focus on just St. Louis to get started, but I'm hoping this will really spread through multiple states through our various partners. I think they're going to be very, very excited about this. In fact, I was talking with Mary Kay. I said, we may have to already start going after grants and things like that. But there's some other really fun things you can do that we've actually been doing already. If you go out and you deal with people at night, let's say you do some kind of program in the nature areas, you can capture bat flight echolocation calls. It's amazing. Those little bat calls will show up on this. You can see the little calls, and it turns out that bats have a pretty high kilohertz of the way they make a sound. So you can very easily pick out a bat call from all the ground noise that's going on. That's really fun. And once again, it makes nature come alive. The other thing that I'm looking at right now is I'm really trying to encourage a lot more night hikes and people just getting involved in nature at night. Just don't go inside, do your TV. Actually go out and experience either stargazing or maybe a night hike or whatever it is. So let's say we put 3 or 4 AudioMoths out into a conservation area for a week or so. We can pick up when owls are hooting, when bats are flying. We can pick up peepers. We can pick up all those things. And when we do a night hike, we may not actually hear that unusual owl or whatever else, but we can talk about at this location at 2 o'clock in the morning, this is what we heard. And if we're really lucky, we might actually hear the owls or see the bats on the screen or not. And I've actually used infrared glasses, by the way, on bats to show the people, there's actually bats flying, watch them fly. And so we're pairing that with the acoustics to kind of make this really fun. Again, the goal here is just to get people reconnected with the night, make it come alive. And what I hope they're going to do when they go home, say, look, we really got to protect nature. It's really busy out there. Next slide, please. All right. So this brings us to our little pilot project. This has got legs. I will say right now is that I've been reaching out to multiple master naturalist groups that I'm part of, to the Audubon Society, and we're just focusing on the St. Louis area. The idea is to start maybe 10 miles north of St. Louis, place an audio moth out there. What we do is, you can see on the top right over there, that's an audio moth. And what we do is we plan to put those in little buckets so that it'll capture the sounds above and not so much from the ground noise. Capture that as they start coming through the North St. Louis, and then as they come through the metro area, we've actually got a request in to put audio moth at the Gateway Arch, which we still have got to get that approved, but I'm optimistic that'll happen. Some major parks in the St. Louis area. We're trying to get a really tall building too, because a lot of times, obviously, the birds are flying into these tall buildings, so we'd like to get maybe a positive story when the birds come over. Hey, look, there's actually birds flying over. Here's the calls. And then as they go further south through the South Metro area, there's about another 10 miles south, we have a major conservation area called Shaw Nature Reserve. And this is just the listening stations that I envision. The truth is that we have a lot of volunteers stepping forward. I have over a dozen volunteers. They're literally fighting for these devices, which is a lot of fun. And we'll be probably doing locations all throughout the place. Again, we're not trying to be really too fancy with this one. We don't know how it works, so we want to try some stuff, see what the sounds work, and which ones we pick up well and which ones we don't, kind of thing. I have a wildlife acoustic song meter, which is a more professional level. And it turns out I've actually got access to 2 now. We're going to put those side by side with the AudioMoths and see how they compare and, try different things. So this is a lot of data to capture. It's great to do this. You can imagine these files get large, these little sound files. You literally can capture it on this AudioMoth and put it in your computer and just play it. And if there's a bird call, you can literally get your Merlin ID and you can say, okay, what bird is that? And then you can do some other things visually just to look at it and see what the bird signature looks like. It turns out, by the way, that chickadees don't have a harmonic. I don't know if you know that, but you can look at a chickadee's bird call, little signature. It's like a little, not like a hockey puck, but it's a little signature, and you can almost tell immediately without even listening to it. It turns out it's a chickadee. Cardinals have other kinds of little signatures as well. Really a lot of fun. So we're really just saying, look, let's just have some fun, and we're going to post these to eBird, and we're going to do some other things. But some interesting things that came out of this is Audacity, which is a free open source software, is really good to play this back. Of course, many of you may already be familiar with Merlin ID, which allows a lot of us to just play a call and then they'll identify what kind it is. But the thing that's kind of got some of our techie guys really excited is that there's a software called Nighthawk. And what it does is it takes all these sound files, and you can run it through this artificial intelligence software that's run on Python, if you know what that is. And you can tell it to, hey, look, analyze this file. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes per hour. And from that, kick out, let's say, an Audacity file. In other words, we can listen to it and try to identify the species and families of the birds if you can. Wow, what fun that is. I think they're up to 82 species they can identify. So we're going to have a lot of fun. It'll probably really speed up the process of just trying to analyze, like from a sound file, what the actual birds are. And they will sound differently as they're flying over through nocturnal calls from, basically a daytime kind of thing. And so we're really hoping that we can really bring nature alive with all this project. And the one thing I know already, without even going any further, we've been having a lot of fun with it because I've personally been out and I've been listening to deer snorting in the daytime, and I could hear I can see bat signatures. I can find out that birds are waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I can identify what the kind they are. So it is really another gateway. Again, in our area, as you probably are also experienced for years, a lot of times the parks close early. We can't get access to them, but you can put an acoustic device out there and listen all night, and you can get this wonderful feedback about what's really going on in nature. And it's really a lot of fun. So next slide, please. All right, so this is what we're doing. One of the things I would encourage you to consider is to do your part. If you go out to our website, Dark Sky Missouri, you can see you get a little drop down. You can do this QR code there. There's established, Dark Sky Missouri has worked with the Illuminating Engineering Society to establish 5 principles of responsible outdoor lighting. They're not hard. If you start with number 1, it simply says, look, if you don't need a light, turn it off. It's pretty simple. You would be surprised how many people have lights on that they don't even need to have on. It needs to be targeted. In other words, put only where you need it. You don't need to shine the top of trees, so you probably should shield it if you can. You don't need it any brighter than you necessary. People, what they're doing is they're buying these LEDs. They realize that, hey, look, they're cheap to operate. They last forever. So if I could buy one, why don't I buy 3? And it's getting way too bright. And what happens is the light actually bounces off the pavement and goes up into the sky and lights up the sky. And of course, if you could control it, why not? If you can have maybe a criminal coming around, if it's on all the time, you're probably not ever going to notice the person's there. But if the light comes on when somebody comes around, then you can actually maybe make more be more aware that there's actually a problem with somebody actually outside. And the thing that the LED lights bring is really the ability to control the wavelengths, like the blue violet wavelengths, which is more like the daylight. In other words, you get bright blue, it's more like midday, which that's not good for us as humans, and it's not good for animals. We want warmer colors, something like 2700 Kelvin or whatever else. Anyway, all that's on there. You can actually go out and you can do a home assessment if you want to of your house. And it's just a really good way to kind of get into really what's really going on. Next slide, please. So with that, that's really what I had to say. I'm sure I hope there'll be a few questions. It's been a discovery, if you will, for us to figure this out. We really didn't get that long ago that we determined we were actually going to get the AudioMoths. So we've been very quickly trying to figure out how does it work, and we're sort of like making it up as we go. But it is a lot of fun, and I've been having a blast with working with the teams on this. Okay.
Wow, thank you. I just learned a lot. I had already read a lot about the projects, but now I feel like I know even more. So I definitely appreciate it. And I think I need to do a home assessment. I'm starting to think of my front porch light and wondering how bright is that? How necessary is it to be on as long as it is? So definitely some immediate things that I can be doing for sure. We definitely want to make sure we open it up for questions. So, Kelsey, were there any questions that were dropped in the chat before we kind of open it up for people to verbally ask them?
We have quite a few that are in the Q&A section. I don't know if would you like me to read those to you, or would you like to just browse through?
I think if you read them out loud and then Dawn can answer them out loud, I think that would be great. Is that what you would prefer to, Dawn?
That's fine. That's fine. Sure.
Sure, yeah, one of the first ones we got, and you touched on this briefly, Don, but are there plans to expand this project eventually, perhaps outside of St. Louis metro area?
Oh, it's absolutely. In fact, this is one of those things that you just sort of discovered as you go. So my idea is like, we'll start with St. Louis because I know there are a lot of people here. We'll see if we can figure this out. And my idea though was, look, I'm going to spread this because I actually I'm basically the founder of Lights Out Heartland. We have multiple states involved. I mentioned this at our last meeting. I think you guys would love to get involved with this. But what happened is that in no time flat, all 18 AudioMoths are taken up just in St. Louis. The people are jumping on this. I said, okay, let's just go with the pony. We'll ride where it goes, right? And we'll see if we can maybe from this build a case to do a grant or something like to populate like all across the 6 states. I think people are going to love this. It is what I was telling Mary Kay. We sat down. I've been sitting down with our training with our folks, and I think they think this is going to be like a really long training session. In 5 minutes, I've showed them how to program this thing. They go, well, this is easy. I can do this myself. And I showed them how to pull the little file off, and they can listen to the birds and everything else. They go, well, there's nothing to this. I think we could take that model and expand it.
Awesome, thank you. The next one is about International Observe the Moon Night, excuse me, and if there are any plans to collaborate with those sorts of events. This year it is on September 14th.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a webinar tonight on that very topic. I run, in addition to the other stuff I do, I'm a co-leader of the International Library Telescope Program. And so if you go to librarytelescope.org, I'll be doing a webinar tonight with some folks there that are really promoting that. I've been doing this for several years. It's a project that I love, and we actually, if you're not aware what the project is, basically it's where we place telescopes in the libraries for checkout like a book. You can literally go to a library and check out just for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever the normal book is, and you can also do binoculars in many libraries. We have 6 countries now. I host monthly meetings, and tonight's our webinar. So go to librarytelescope.org, and hopefully you'll be able to learn more about that.
That's great, thank you. I can tell we have some AudioMoth fans in the audience. We have a question about how the AudioMoths are going to be oriented for this project in their cases. I think you mentioned briefly that they're going to be pointed upward to capture the sound of migrating birds, and where are you mounting them? Can you just come back to that and give us a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so that's a tricky part. We don't know because we've never really tried to do this, but what my research so far, and there are some people out there that are a lot more experienced than this. So the very first thing we're going to do is the thing that you're competing with is ground noise. In other words, insects, for example, are really loud, at the ground level. So as we've walked around scouting sites to say, okay, we were in like one major conservation area, and there's like everything going on around us. Can we find a glade or something where we're a little ways away from that? Can we find like a roof to put it on to where it's a little above that? But the key thing we're trying to do now is put them in a bucket. I know that sounds crazy, but you do is you put them in a bucket, raise them a little bit, and that does help muffle the sound a little bit around that. These calls are very faint, and so we're going to try stuff. And also the idea of getting to the top of a large building or into an open area where there's not much going on in terms of insects and things like that. That should help us. But by having 18, the truth is we're trying a bunch of stuff. Some stuff will work and some stuff won't, but that'll be the learnings for the next time.
Awesome. I'm seeing a lot of ideas for different groups and projects that this might integrate with at some point. So definitely encourage you to check those out in the Q&A at some point. There's a lot of great ideas. Will there be any students involved in the project or plans to incorporate students into this sort of thing in the future?
Well, in the future, maybe. Right now, obviously, we just got the AudioMoths, and students are gearing up to go back to school. So it's like even the professors are tough to get in touch with right now. They're like, I got to get my school, my colleagues, my courses all ready to do. But our Dark Sky, Missouri, we do work with students. In fact, we have one of our students on our board that she just graduated. And so we're very in tune to this. For me, in a short project launch, I'm trying to go with some people that are really good techie, that they're comfortable with, they have some time available and we could move quickly. But I see this, I do see this potentially even moving into a checkout program. I know the Mary Kay, you've talked about that with libraries. I already deal with 40 library systems in Metro St. Louis area alone, and across the entire country, the Library of Things is a big deal right now. But I got to get this in my head. How does this really work? In other words, it's one thing to get a little AudioMoth, but how do you use it? How do you program it? It could very well be one of those citizen science things, by the way, for SciStarter to get involved with, So I think there's just a lot to go with, but we got to figure out what we got first.
Great, thank you very much, Don. I think that is about all the general questions. I see there's some specific questions that I can actually send out some links to, so I'll do that in the Q&A section. But in the meantime, if anyone has a question where they would like to raise their hand or ask the question out loud, we can certainly unmute you and allow you to do that.
Okay.
And I'll also stop screen sharing now so that, let's see. In theory, I'm going to stop screen sharing now. There we go. That allows me to see if anyone is ready to raise their hand or wants to speak out loud. Kelsey, are we also able to just unmute everyone so that if anyone wants to just call out their name and then their question? I know that for some, it is not always easy to find the raise hand button.
Yes, I believe the setting I just hit, asking everybody to unmute, will give you the chance to allow yourself to speak if you'd like to go ahead and answer your question out loud. Ask your question out loud, rather, and we'll try to answer it. I did see another good question pop up in the Q&A about whether you will be measuring temperature changes at all and how that might coordinate with the sound data that you're collecting.
No, we have not thought about that yet. Probably the next logical thing in terms of what we're doing is not so much the temperature, but the cloud cover, because the cloud cover could make a difference on the altitude of the birds. And I do have projects right now where we are literally looking at the sky brightness. We measure that with other instruments, and we could also look at the clouds. But you could think about it, clouds coming in, birds fly low. You know, what's the correlation between all that? And you know, maybe that even makes us get better night calls if they're lower. Obviously, they're rather than really, really high. I do see a question about Nighthawk in there. If you go, I never really heard of Nighthawk until I went to the Indiana Audubon Society's nocturnal flight call page, and they have a little link in there. And in our project, we have, if you go to darkskymissouri.org/nature, you'll find our project, and there'll be a link to Nighthawk, and it's a very specific thing that you could download. I see another person there saying, is there some sort of training? Yes, there'll be training for the St. Louis folks on how to use Python to do this. It turns out that it was much simpler than I thought. You know, I thought, well, man, I don't know, this is going to be complicated, but within a few minutes, one of our volunteers was downloading this and doing stuff. So it's not really complicated. And that's the beautiful thing about the AudioMoth and some of the stuff is that, you know, once you get it kind of ready to go, it's really not complicated.
It's interesting that you mention cloud coverage. One of the big partners for Eclipse Soundscapes was working with Globe Eclipse, and that specific NASA-funded project, they took temperature readings, but also cloud coverage on the day of the eclipse. And once we've all sorted through all of our data, we'll be doing some sharing of that data as it relates to cloud coverage and temperature in places where we had audio and observations. And so hearing you mention that, it's like, as soon as you start getting into sound and acoustics and nature,
Oh yeah, that's great.
clouds come right along.
Yeah, it's, to me, that's what's so fun about the Master Natural stuff is that all this stuff is all connected. You know, you can't even take light by itself. It's just another factor in loss of habitat and all that type of stuff. And sound is even an issue, sometimes sound. But there's bats, for example, that won't go out of a particular area because it's too lit up and it reduces their foraging area. And yet sound could be disruptive, and everything's all connected. Really great.
There's another question in the Q&A. We have a participant from Spain who is wondering if you know of any other continents that are working on this kind of project.
No, I do not. I like to do big projects and hopefully be one of the leading edge type of folks, but you know, I'm pretty connected with the Dark Sky International group because I started the Missouri chapter, and of course we got multiple states. So I'm really hoping that this thing will have some legs, so to speak, that's going to start, other people will pick it up. I first have to kind of break it down to where it's pretty simple steps. And Indiana Audubon Society, they have just done a tremendous job. If you go look at their website, they're using much bigger, more professional, like, you know, $1,000 or $400 or $500 collection devices. I think the AudioMoth will be pretty good. In fact, I think they're even looking into that because I think it's you can get so many of them out there, right? You can collect so much. If you can't afford $1,000 one for like a lot of people, but you might be able to put 100 of these AudioMoths out and collect stuff everywhere. And it may not be perfect, but you'll have more engagement of the public and master naturals, as well as maybe a lot more data to work with.
I'll put it out there one more time. If anyone wants to just call out their question, you are more than welcome to do that. So don't feel shy like you can't.
So I do see a few questions here about birds, and I'm not a birder per se, but we are tied into the Audubon Society, not only in St. Louis, but in Kansas City and Kansas and others. And these guys know a lot about birds. So I think they're going to be pretty excited about this. I see a question about wind. Yeah, wind will impact bird altitudes. There's a lot of things that really can impact us. And that's part of it, is that for me, it's a big learning curve, right? It's just stuff that okay, I'm learning something brand new, and this is fun. Can you use a balloon to elevate them off? That's a good question. I never really thought about that. When I talk with some of the people about placing these AudioMoths out, they want to know how big they are, and they're literally pretty tiny little things. In fact, we've printed a little case, a 3D printed case that we put them in that makes them water resistant. And wow, you can put those practically anywhere. Strap them to a tree, put them in a bucket on a rock somewhere. And I see a mention of Girl Scouts. I work a lot with Girl Scouts. I think they would have a lot of fun with that type of thing.
Yeah, they're amazingly tiny. They're about half the size of a cell phone and pretty light. They almost look like a little circuit board that has been attached to 3 batteries. So they look very simple, but they're powerful little devices.
Yes, they are. Yeah. And what's interesting about them is you can program them. There are different kilohertz, if you will. Our humans can't really hear much over 20 kilohertz, if you will, but you can go all the way up to like 200 if you want to. They make very big files, by the way, but that allows you to get to really faint stuff that are really maybe not even, well, certainly well out of our hearing. But what I love about these things is the signatures that you can see. You can look at the sound that they're making, and you can start figuring out what's going on. Like, that's a bird, that's something else. This is a piece of machinery because it makes an unusual, like, repeating sound. I can hear that just, and without even listening to it. And so one guy that I was doing a little studying on, it was in Los Angeles, and he was able to take an entire night's recordings and in 10 or 15 minutes, just visually look through the entire file and figure out where the birds were. And so then he could focus just on the birds themselves. So that is kind of fun if you think about it. I see a question about night cameras. Okay, here's my story on the night camera. I was testing the AudioMoth, and I put it out in a little conservation area. I let it record all night. I came back the next day, and there's something that was making a snorting sound, and it's driving me absolutely crazy. What is that thing? So yes, I bought a night camera. In fact, our Dark Sky, Missouri, we're buying cameras to record nature at night by visually doing that. We're also doing things to measure light pollution. We're trying to get these in hands of students so they can actually do this. So pairing an audio device with a night sky camera and other meters to measure the brightness of lights themselves, the bulbs themselves, and the sky themselves, it creates a whole series of citizen science projects that I think will be really, really fun for students. And they love, by the way, I've done a lot of outreach, and they love technology. They love every kind of technology that you can give them. And it's been really fun to deal with people like that.
Yeah, we just love science being thought about in these multi-sensory ways. That it's about using these different meters it's about the sound, it's about what you can see, it's whatever sense is available to you is what you can use to do all this scientific exploration, which is pretty amazing and a lot of fun to play with all these gadgets.
Yeah, I see a question about putting the AudioMoth in a tube. That's a good question, but we have to think about how we have to do this. If we put it in a bucket, we can't put it on the bottom of the bucket because it could rain, and we could put holes in it, but it's still going to get a lot of water. So we actually have to elevate it with a brick or rock or something, so that, by the way, the bucket doesn't blow over too. But we want to get it up a little ways to where it's off the bottom of the bucket, so the bucket will properly drain. Now, the way that we have our cases, they are, I think, pretty much moisture proof, where they could rain and they can stand up just fine. We've got these little 3D cases that we printed. But still, we need to get them up. And I think if you put a rock down there, it might be pretty solid as far as vibration. Yeah, go for SciStar. You'll love those guys. You can find all kinds of wonderful things out there.
Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour, so we'll throw it out there. Any last questions? Throw them out verbally, put them into the chat, whatever works best for you. We're happy to kind of answer some of these last things. All right, well, that might be it. Don, thank you so much. This has been really interesting.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot. I read a lot about the project, and then listening to you speak, I learned so much more, and things that I know I can do today to be more supportive of nature. I live in a suburban area, and I have too many lights on. It's very clear to me at this exact moment.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Same with me.
And so hopefully everyone who was here today learned something, is going to go turn off some lights, and maybe start getting involved, following the project, checking out Dark Sky, and staying involved in all things related to Eclipse Soundscapes too, of course. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.